Hi everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Ordinary Dads podcast. Or as we like to call it, TODCAST. Because you know, TOD is short for The Ordinary Dad. So, TOD was podcast.
I like it.
Thank you for laughing.
Well done.
When This is the Dad's podcast, by the way, so dad jokes and all that.
That's good.
Please expect that. So yay, very first episode. Hi everyone, my name is Josiah Ng. I'm a stay-home dad, and on our TODCAST today, we have Cliff, Tam, and Tam Wai Jia. You want to say hi, guys?
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, very nice to have you guys. So, quick introduction. Cliff is the founder of the Ordinary Dads, a group of stay-home dads that meet once every month. And on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about why he started the Ordinary Dads and explore more about why we're starting to do this podcast. Before we get started on what I think will be a very illuminating episode, we'd like to do a shout out to our friends at Miles and More. Here at the Ordinary Dads, we're a grown-up initiative that exists to help other dads on their parenting journeys. And this podcast could only be made possible by the generous support from Miles and More. A link to their work is in the show notes, so do check these awesome guys out. We also want to take this time to thank Common Ground for supporting the Ordinary Dads with a venue for stay-home dads together, share stories, and find comfort in each other's experiences. At Common Ground Civic Centre, people gather to learn new skills, collaborate, and share insights with one another. So, Cliff, first, let's get to know a little bit more about you. Cliff, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Cliff. I've been a stay-at-home dad since middle of 2019. So that's almost 5 years now.
Okay.
So, and we have two girls. One is 7, the other one is turning 5 next month. So, when we started, they were 2 and a bit and 3 months. And so I would say, being a stay-at-home dad is not what I envisioned I would do as a father.
You never ever even dreamed or imagined that you would be a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I here's my disclaimer for my intro is I never really liked kids until my kids were born.
Wow, I never knew that.
And I'm not like this, so I want to be the best father ever. I just kind of go along and see what needs to be done.
Right.
And then, somehow on the way, I guess we can share later how,
sure.
I
Excited to hear more about that.
Took this path of,
Yeah. And now we have Wai Jia, who by the way, is unofficially credited as the person who made the Ordinary Dads happen. More about that later. But we will officially credit her by the end of this episode, okay? So Wai Jia, why don't you tell us more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm first and foremost Cliff's wife. And I am a medical doctor. So I do public health work. And over the past decade since we've been married, I think Cliff and I have been involved in humanitarian missions work. For myself, I ended up specializing in outbreak response. So from time to time when there are crises, I get deployed overseas to serve. I'm also a founder of an international nonprofit called Kite Dreams and Kite Song Global. And on the side, I do ministry, I preach and speak, and I recently wrote a book. So so that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the book later on.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's start at the very beginning. What were the factors that led you guys to decide for Cliff to be a stay-home dad? And especially,
sure.
When you didn't even like kids. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's just pull it back a little bit more. So I was born in Hong Kong and grew up in Canada. So I always see myself as a Canadian. And when we were in Canada, when both our girls were born, because, Wai Jia needs to go down to the States to study. So in between that, for her master's, so in between that, both our girls were born. But we need to come back to Singapore because my wife needs to, as a medical doctor, study medicine in Singapore. She's bonded with the government. And so she needs to finish her bond. So we need to come back to Singapore for her to do so. So coming back, the reality is that she's going to work full time either way. She's going to full time. That's nothing, that is set. For me, I always thought, okay, you know what, maybe I just go back to church and work or do something else, full time and then send the kids to daycare and whatnot. So when we came back to Singapore, we were actually exploring different options, right? In Singapore, your options is, get a helper, you find daycare or some sort of, arrangement so that you can go back to work. And I remember we were just looking, exploring, and nothing really fits to what we like our kids to have. And I remember
Our values.
yeah.
Okay.
And I remember Wei Jia just made this one comment, just saying like, it doesn't really make sense for like my paycheck to go to a stranger to look after our kids. And if I work, then I'm probably not able to see them, for the whole time. And so, then the idea of being a stay-at-home dad started kind of
Got seeded.
got seeded and slowly sort of makes sense. And I guess just more of a background is that, like I never really like I guess I actually be more prepared, but I never really thought like, oh, when I become a father, what type of father I would be or how involved I would be. But yet, like when my kids were born, I was very involved. So for example, when Wei Jia was doing her master's of public health, I was the one who's looking after our firstborn. At that time she was like, just a couple years old, and I remember at that time we were when she was studying, people were saying, oh, you should send them to daycare and whatnot, but it just didn't work out. And then someone we asked other people for advice, and one of our mentors said that, you know what, Cliff, because I was studying my master's online, and so he said that like you should focus on looking after your child instead of doing the master's. And I'm like, okay, for me, okay, I never thought about that, but that's our plan B. So that like that kind of background of me being involved hands-on with my kids, even though it's not what I planned it's not so foreign. So when the idea of being a stay-at-home dad, I'm like, okay, it's not what I have envisioned, what I planned, but it's not something that is like so unknown that I'll be like, oh, I cannot teach my kids. No, I think I can, because I did it with my first one and our second one too. So So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just take this path and see where it goes.
Right. How natural was the process? Because I can imagine some dads would think like, oh wow, for me to transition into a stay-home dad, it's not natural for some of us,
Yeah. I mean, okay, so like, like my parents never homeschooled me, okay? So I homeschool or like, stay home. No, my parents would never stay home. My parents both of them were working when I was born, okay? So that's my background.
Okay.
But I think what really transit well is actually my wife, Wei Jia, because when we first started, she decided that we can try homeschooling our firstborn. So at that time she was like 2 years old and a bit, 2.5, and so and also because more of her flexibility of her work where she can work at home.
Okay.
So she would like, so it's not this like, like she go to work for like 10 hours and I'm like all alone by my kids, that kind of thing. I'm like surviving, trying not to use them and whatever, but rather it's a slow transition for me, like where she'll look after them in the morning for a bit, do a homeschooling with the firstborn, and then I will look after them like, I don't know, for like 2 hours, 3 hours, and then we have lunch, and then I reckon
So it's like a tag team.
a tag team. It was started out like that, and then just slowly transit me into like taking more responsibility over our kids.
Right. So I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's important for a couple to communicate.
Yeah.
Were there certain conversations that you guys needed to have in terms of, I don't know, boundaries, or what are some of the understanding, what time to what time? Yeah.
I mean, there was so much going on at that time, I think.
Okay.
But I think what was really, really important was that we have a sofa at home, and we called it like couch conversations, like almost every night we would like just talk about our day and reflect, just kind of decompress.
So like debrief.
Yeah, in a way, but also I think we call it like connect time. Like, are you ready to connect? Because in the day, you're just so overwhelmed and busy all the time. And I think one of the best things that we did was to just check in with each other, because we didn't realize how much this would take out of both of us. I mean, even for myself, I never thought I would homeschool.
Right.
Like I was born and bred. I mean, I was born in Malaysia, but I came here when I was 1, and I was really bred through the Singapore system. I was raised by, domestic helpers. Went for like multiple enrichment. I really had the classic, typical Singaporean life. So this whole idea of what homeschooling, what one of us is a stay-home spouse, what now I'm gonna, opt for instead of a surgical specialty like try and see if I can do flexible hybrid work or something like that, and then eventually scale down to part-time. Like all this was so foreign to us, but yet it felt right, because when we got married and then when we became parents, we realized that one of the values we forged, and again, this was all unplanned. It was something we discovered on the go. So we discovered that our values was that we really wanted to be hands-on parents in our children's lives. One of the main motivations was that we knew we wanted to be involved in humanitarian work. So we suspected that sometime in our future, there might be other elements of instability in our lives. We might be moving, we might be relocating, things like that. But the one thing we really wanted our kids to have was like a strong emotional foundation with us. Because they say so much about how the early years are so important for nurture and connection. And so we wanted to be there for them for that. And we felt there was just no better way than to be fully present for them before that window closed.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because that was something that I felt led to do as well in my own stay home journey.
Exactly.
I unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, during my firstborn's first few years of his life, wasn't as present. And I could actually see the effects of me not being around, to be emotionally there for him. And I think that really gave me time to think about, wow, is this really what I want for my child?
Wow.
If I don't make that intentional connection and be present for him, down the road, we're gonna not be able to connect with each other as readily and as easily. Do I really want that? And so I guess I'm happy that I made that move to be a stay-home dad, and now, I'm in a place where I'm able to be there for him as well as my youngest right now. And I had this thought about, is there a right timing? And I used to mourn over the fact that I should have done this earlier. But I guess, timing is also something that's relative to different couples. And different families as well.
Sure.
So I guess, for people who are listening to this podcast, if you're thinking about being there for your children, being present, being a stay-home dad is one way. But I know, of course, there are also some couples who have made it work, while both are working and everything.
Sure.
I think you're right. There's no like one right way, but what's important, like the common theme I see at least between you, Cliff, and other parents that, we admire and we love is that courage to really be intentional, to examine what values you hold at that time, and then being really brave to just step out and act on it authentically.
I think something that I realized as a father or as a parent, after, this number of years as a stay-at-home dad is, what do you really want your family, what's the value that, your family wants to hold on to, and just don't assume that, just everybody is doing what it's doing, you just follow them. So for example, in Singapore, we'd be like sending our kids to enrichment class, and then sending them full-time daycare, and then, that would be the way to take care of a child, because I think we can miss out a lot. And I think, as Ray just mentioned, it's like, as we discover ourselves, what do we want in this parenting journey, is actually like, what do we value? And for me, it's always going back to love. I value love, and how do I show that love? Is by spending time with my children, because that's how they will know I love them, because I am in presence with them. Because they cannot, especially when they're so small, they cannot feel love like over a video call or voice call. They need that, presence. And of course, that is very expensive, because you cannot work, you can do anything else, right? You can do so many other stuff, but but with a child, you have to be, presence in front of them. And I guess, to be honest, all relationships that you value, you need to be present. For example, if you're going to date with a girl or a guy you like, you're not going to be like, chatting away on your phone. You'd be like, putting your phone down and looking in that person in the eyes, right? Because you love them, you want to, you enjoy that presence.
You want to be there with them.
You want to be there with them, right? You don't want to be like, hey, I'm on a Zoom call right now. Right? That's so silly, right? But when it comes to our child, we tend to be like, myself included, we tend to be like, you know what? My child is like doing something so simple. Let me read the news. Let me check out what's going on. Let me pay my bills. Let me use my phone, right? And I'm losing that presence with that connection with the child, even though I may feel like it's not so worth it, but in that child's eyes, can mean a lot to the child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what I'm hearing also, it's very important to really recognize what values you want to impart to your children.
Yeah.
And I mean, as natural as it's sounding right now, I'm reflecting on my own journey as well. And I realized that I haven't really put aside that time to really think about, wait a minute, what exactly are the values that I want to impart to my children?
Sure.
Because, guess what? If you are not the one who is going to be letting your kids, guiding your kids into a certain value that you have decided that you want your family to uphold,
Right.
the world and everyone else around them is going to
Define
impart
them.
and define those
Yeah.
values for them.
Yeah.
So that's really great to hear, and it's something that I'm very encouraged as well. And guess what? I guess we can't outsource these things, right? Yeah, I mean, especially in a society these days, I think it's sometimes very convenient to
Yes.
think about, who else can do this for me?
Yeah.
Can I pay someone else to do so?
Correct.
Yeah.
I used to have the mindset as well, but I've grown to realize that, fathering, parenting is
Yeah.
actually something that I can't outsource.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Which brings me to the question about what exactly is the role of a father? Why is a father's presence so important?
I think, I mean, I see parents, but I do think that like when it comes to our child, right? At least even myself included, like my father in general defined the role of the family, the function of the family, and how everything looks like that, those relationships. And also the father kind of leads by setting example, right? Like these values, how do we teach our kids or show our kids these values? Because these values are not like, it's not like I'm gonna sit down with my 4-year-old and say, here's a list of our values.
You have to show, not tell.
Yeah, it's not like values. It's not something that you print nicely and you put it on a wall. Sometimes you say company, right? They stick up their values, right? For me, it's like it means nothing. You got to show me how are these values displayed, and a child is like that. There's no way you can just put it on the list because they see the actions. So these values have to be demonstrated, and how do you demonstrate it? Is by the father taking the example, right? And the thing is, just because I say one value does not mean I actually display that value. For example, if I say my value is love, and then at home I'm always yelling at my kids, right? So there's a discrepancy of, and our kids can pick that up so fast. Anybody can pick that up, but our kids especially. So values are actually not, is unconsciously and consciously, and we have to be very intentional to be like, what, am I really displaying this value if I yell at my kids all the time because they're messy, or I'm grumpy, or I'm tired? Maybe I need to change a bit.
Wai Jia, what's your perspective about why is a father's presence so important?
I think it's important because it's about partnership and leadership in the house. A father provides stability. And I think something that, I want to kind of smash the paradigm, like challenge the paradigm that people have is that, when people think of a stay-at-home dad, they suddenly think of, a man who's like very subservient and emasculated. And because he's not the breadwinner, he's not the provider, then the wife is doing everything. And I want to challenge that paradigm and reshape it because it's not true. In a sense, since Cliff and I embarked on this journey, we've realized more than ever that it's really a partnership. And as much as Cliff needs me, I need him. And it's become such an interwoven kind of relationship that we have because we need each other. And we see this in the kids. The kids need both of us because each of us play very unique, separate roles that are distinct. And yet together, they become so unique for the children. Yeah, and so I think one of the things that personally we've struggled with, recently we were interviewed about, the emotional labor of the husband and wife when the husband is a stay-at-home dad. What's that emotional labor like?
Okay.
And I think one of the things that people may not see is that stay-at-home dads sometimes carry a huge unseen, invisible kind of emotional burden because of stigma or because of, this journey that has not been walked. And at that time, my hope is that more so-called the wives of stay-at-home dads would understand that this is a journey that is challenging for them and to be able to provide that support for them. So for anybody who's listening, who's actually thinking of embarking on this journey, passion is really important, like your values and all that, but also to be prepared to embrace the conversations and the connection that you will need on a regular basis to really make it work. Because you'll need to continually check in with one another about how are you doing? Are you doing okay? And what are the difficulties that you've had? Yeah.
I mean, it brings me back to what you guys mentioned earlier about that intentional connect time.
Yes.
Something that I also slowly realized later on is that, wow, I really need to set time with my wife for her to check in on me and for me to check in on her as well.
Yeah.
Check in on each other.
Yeah.
On each other.
Yeah.
Because it's actually so easy to, you just try to survive every day, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then my wife is just trying to fight fires at work,
Yeah.
which is back. She's just tired. Sometimes she
Yeah.
doesn't want to talk, right? And I'm just trying to make sure that the kids are alive.
And you fight at home. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when we're back, we're just, so how's everything? Okay, good. Yeah. Actually not. Actually it wasn't good. Yeah.
Understand.
So I think one of the things, I guess, that I'm trying to, one of the things that I'm learning through this conversation is that if anyone's really thinking about making a step to be a stay-home dad, there needs to be constant communication with each other,
Absolutely.
your spouse and you.
Yeah.
And something that I've also learned in my journey so far is that, you're first and foremost a husband before you're a father. And so I think it's also important to have that intentional time and connection with your wife as well. I mean, we've talked about being present for our children, right?
No, it's so true.
But it's also about being present for our spouse as well.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I think the funny thing is that, like, sometimes for me, because I know some stay-at-home moms, and they can, like, spend a whole day with the kids, look after the kids, take care of the house, and like also have like a part-time job at night. And for me, I see myself like, I cannot do that. Like I cannot like look after my kids the whole day, and at home Wai Jia does most of the cooking, and I struggle with that. I'm like, am I not so good as, even as a stay-at-home dad, I'm not good enough to like, look after the house ourselves. And I think I can see that as a stay-at-home dad, I think, as Wai Jia mentioned, it's those emotional labor that I have to carry on, which is hidden, and sometimes I'm not even aware of them.
Yeah.
And also I realized that I cannot do this by myself.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I thought, I just gung-ho it because, like, I used to do like triathlon, I used to do, marathons. If I can do those, I can, look after my 2-year-old 2 kids, right?
Actually, which is harder, triathlon?
I mean, I did the Ironman, right? Triathlon.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I realized that, compared to looking after kids, Ironman is a joke. Like, you do like, 4K swim, 180K bike, and you run a marathon in 17 hours. That's nothing compared to being a stay-at-home dad. Because, you know what? When I do that, people will be like, hey, good job, Cliff, you're doing well. And, you get all these cheers, and, you get a medal, and, you get all these, like, But as a stay-at-home dad, I get none of that. And the worst is, not the worst. The hard part is that as a stay-at-home dad, you have no days off. Every day is, your kids need you, and you have to, always be there, right? And so, but I can see that this journey is not my own journey. It's actually Wai Jia is journeying together with me, because as much as I'm doing this, I also need a lot of her help. And I do appreciate her for, like, giving me time off so that, she finished work, she's tired, she still look after the kids so that I can take a break, because I'm burning out on my end.
I think it's really important for both couples to really come on the same page, to realize that it's a journey together. Because in the early days, it was really hard, in a sense, when Cliff was going through so much emotionally. I was carrying, and this is very common actually, like women carry like the double burden. They are working, and then they're trying to, like, break glass ceilings at work. They're trying to reach KPIs, and on the other hand, at home, there are also a lot of mothering duties that are that mothers find hard to offload. It may be cooking, it may be, setting up play dates for the kids, it may be just spending connect time with the kids. And so it's like a double burden. On the other hand, the stay-at-home dad might feel like, wow, I've lost so much work. How come I'm not more competent in doing more? How come my wife is doing so much and I'm doing so little already? Why do I feel so burnt out? And at one point, I think this was, a point of conflict or tension in our home, because we did sense that there was that shift in dynamics. Right. But what we came to terms with, and we only recognized this actually quite a fair way down the road.
Yeah, maybe like 2 years.
Yeah, that we realized that, you know what, actually what Cliff was carrying, that was the invisible load that I was talking about. The invisible load of stigma, of being in a very new environment. And for Cliff, it's also cross-cultural because he came from Canada, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of invisible loads that he's carrying. And so in the initial period, you know, if the wife is saying, why are you behaving like that? You know, I'm already doing so much, and how come you're not like stepping up to the plate? Then that can create a long-term rift. But if the couple is committed to saying, you know what, we're in this together, let's like make it work. So I don't see it as, you know, parents don't get day offs, right? I mean, we are all parents every single day. But what we do for one another is that, you know, give each other quiet time, give each other space.
Yeah.
Right.
So something that we do every day when we talk about the tech team, it's that we intentionally split the day into 2 to 3 hour blocks.
Okay.
So that nobody actually has to massively take 1 6 hour block, which is extremely tiring.
I see.
But when you keep passing the baton, right, 2 hours, you actually get a lot done.
Okay.
Because you are able to attend to your work. I just quit my job recently. We're
Okay.
planning to transit to Tanzania. And again, you see all these different changes in our life stages. They shouldn't change the one thing, which is the communication in the marriage and the commitment to the partnership. Because if I look down on Cliff because he's not bringing in a paycheck, then
I'm
why?
not, like, I'm not pulling my weight.
Yeah, then
right?
why doesn't he look down on me now? Because I'm unemployed. The thing is, he doesn't because he loves me not for what I bring to the table. He loves me for me. And so in the same way, I don't look at him and say like, you know, why are you a stay-at-home dad? And then I still have to play with the kids. It's not like that. We can't. And we don't dichotomize like, oh, I'm the breadwinner and you are the stay-at-home parent. My greatest compliment was when one day our kids came to us and they said, Daddy, you're a stay-at-home dad, right? Because you're always playing with us. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like they understand his
Now
presence.
they're older, right?
But then my 6-year-old also came to me and said, Mommy, you're home. Are you a stay-at-home mom? Do we have a stay-at-home dad and a stay-at-home mom? I'm like, this is great. You know, our kids think that we are like, you know,
Just
even
all
though,
home
yeah,
together.
they're like,
Yeah.
so like, wow, so
You
I-
don't feel the difference. You don't feel like you're not around and all that. Yeah.
in a sense. So, but of course, all this was a journey. The first few years were rough. The first few years when you're actually walking it out and not
hard.
understanding these dynamics, it's just happening to you.
Yeah.
And you can, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. Why are people saying these things? Why are they looking at us this way? That weight of that stigma or having to live up to people's expectations, that can be very difficult. But I think what's most important, a revelation Cliff was sharing with me yesterday, is that actually Wai Jia, he said, we're walking on the train station and he said, you know, if only from the start we believe that each other's opinion of each other and the kids' opinions matter more than anything else in the world. We would have got this all sorted out.
Wow.
Right?
I mean,
just the three of us. You know, why do you care about what anybody else thinks?
That's great.
I think like I remember like the honest is like, you know, I remember there's like one day or night or maybe a couple of nights where like, you know, at the end after you put the kids to sleep and you're both like lying on the sofa, you're so tired. Right? And then you know, and then you're just thinking like, wouldn't it be easier in life if I hire a helper to do all these chores for me? Right? Wouldn't it be easier if I send my kids to full-time daycare? Right? And you do think about that because it would be easier and the options are so available in Singapore. And we did, you know, I don't know about her, but I did thought about it. But then I realized, okay, if I hire a helper or if I send my kids to daycare, right, what will happen? Most likely I go back to work and, you know, and make money and nothing wrong with making money, nothing wrong with working, okay?
Yeah.
But it will lose that value of what we have set out in the beginning of the family, which is love and spending time together. Because the problem is that once I go into that route, I know where it will lead because I can see it already. You know, I'll be going back into the rat race, and then my wife's going back rat race, and then all the money we make, then what we do, right? We feel like we need to, we love our kids. How do we do that? By spending money on them. But we won't spend time on them because we don't have that time.
Although I also want to preface that by saying that, you know, for people who are listening in right now, we're definitely not championing like this is the best way and this is the one way, because there are lots of parents you're listening in right now, you have a helper, you have a community. It doesn't mean that, you know, it's any worse. In fact, all of us all of us must be led to make the decision that's best for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just about knowing yourself, knowing your context. For some people, having a helper is great. They're very intentional about, having a helper at home and or even sending their kids to kindergarten or different things like that. None of that is bad. None of that is wrong. It's about knowing yourself and how you respond to those elements in your life. And Cliff and I just knew that, if we have helper at home, we'd just, easily, just switch off. And because that was how I was raised. That would be my default.
So this is not a judgment for people who are listening.
Absolutely not.
Yes,
No.
This is just my own judgment of myself.
Yeah.
I know that if
knowing
I
yourself.
taken that route,
Exactly.
I know how my mind will go and how that will picture.
Yeah.
And I do not want, and that is not consistent with what we value in our family.
Yes. So the key is the value that you value, knowing that and then living that out wholeheartedly, right?
Yes, according to your context, according to what works for your family.
Every family is different. So whether you have a helper, no helper, daycare, full-time, it's okay. It's all good as long as you guys, consistent with the value that you hold as a family.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to judge people. Yes, you can.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people ask me also like, wow, how come you become a stay-home dad? And I tell them about being present and everything. Of course, some of them do ask, you cannot do that while you're working, man. And I'll tell them, I cannot. I know you can.
I cannot.
I cannot,
I understand.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm taking myself out of a certain system so that I can create that space for my family and myself to be present for my kids.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm very happy for a lot of fathers who are able to do that while holding a job. They have made it work for their families and I think it's great.
Yeah.
It also brings me to what being a stay-home dad is like. Because when I first started this journey, I had a very extreme definition of a stay-home dad. Like you cannot even do part-time work. You cannot even do freelance work, right?
Right.
Your wife comes home, she really just gets to rest. Yeah, I have to make sure that she's not
Josiah,
worried.
Wow, how come I didn't get that? No, just kidding. I'm just
I think I should learn from Josiah.
No. Which turns out to be a false definition.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe Cliff can talk a little bit about what are different kinds of stay-home dads. I mean, we have the ordinary dads, and we've met very different versions, I guess, different kinds of stay-home dads. Yeah.
I think just because I'm a stay-at-home dad doesn't mean I'm like an expert on this. But one thing I do enjoy this journey is that it creates flexibility. So being a stay-at-home dad is however you want to define it is. And I think, to be honest, if I take a step back, I mean, a family as a father, you are the one who's actually like defining that value, that journey that your family is taking.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, for me, is the in some way it can be scary for some people. For me, it's also very exciting because it opened up new possibility that which I never considered. For example, just being stay-at-home dad, looking after my kids full time. And so for me, like you say, like I talk to many stay-at-home dads. Some of them work part-time, some of them don't work, some of them own business, some of them don't. And I think it varies because it depending, like you say, every family is different, every parent is different, every child is different. And so there's so many, like there's no one set formula to be a stay-at-home dad. But I think something that I would say the commonality of a stay-at-home dad is that we value investing in our children by spending time with them. Or connecting
that is
with
what
them.
doesn't change.
That for me is actually the highest priority, and I think that is the hallmark of a stay-at-home dad.
On the flip side, I would share that for wives of stay-at-home dads, it's really important, I think, to create space for stay-at-home dads to decide how they want to run the house in certain areas. So, for example, like the trend that I see is that for the wives of stay-at-home dads, a lot of times they have maybe higher earning power. And sometimes there's that tendency of, okay, I'm earning or whatever at work, and then you bring that same attitude to home, and that can be very unhealthy in the long run. So I think how a stay-at-home dad can add value to the family is also very much affected or impacted by how much the wife is being able to relinquish control and trust her husband to exercise leadership in the household. Because for many wives, maybe they've grown up in households where mom was always the head of home stuff. But now growing up in a new family environment where you are setting the boundaries, I think being able to just stand back, like I think maybe after the first 2 years of this journey together, Cliff really like made it his thing. He was in his element. He knew what he was doing. And it came to a point where I had to realize that for this to really work, for stay-at-home dads to really flourish, that it's so important to be able to just let go and surrender and realize that, you know what? Let's just have fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's also relevant in the sense that I think there are some wives whose husbands have chosen to be stay-home dads, and they, as a couple, they've made the decision. Okay, let's go. I think some wives do also think about, okay, now that my husband is a stay-at-home dad, I have to bring out a certain personality of myself to be in control and everything because I'm earning. And I think some of them do have that pressure, the added pressure upon themselves as well. So it's actually quite encouraging to hear that, wait a minute, you actually don't have to take on that form or type, just have fun with it.
Correct.
With your husband, you don't have to, say that because you're earning something, you take control and everything.
And if there are listeners who are actually feeling that, I just want to normalize that and validate that, because it's very normal. I think when you go into this unconventional route, the husband who is a stay-at-home dad could be carrying an additional load, right? We talked about that emotional burden, that stigma or whatever. And the wife, on the other hand, is also carrying an invisible burden because she has this added imposition, right? Of working. And then women like to add on their own expectations of themselves. And then plus society. Society looking at the couple and the added weight on both of them saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So I think having compassion and empathy for each other in that marriage is really, really important, especially in the early years, because all these comments, all the critics, they can add to that stress.
Wow.
So that's why I know people think that Cliff is laughing, but I know some people think we're very intense. How can you have connect time every single night? But I'm like, we need it, trust me. We need it, Sometimes you cry, you laugh together, we just like,
Wow.
I think, talk about the emotional labor. I mean, just the other day I was looking at like some YouTube videos about, someone talk about critiquing about staying home there, saying that they're lazy, they don't want to work, that's why they stay home, looking after the dog. And I'm like, you have no idea what is a stay-at-home dad, because if you're looking at a dog, you're not even have dad in the first place, and so so sometimes society has this negative view of a stay-at-home dad, saying that what is it because you cannot work there for you don't love the home. But I think but how do you combat this? And I think for me, one important fact is like, what am I doing for my children? What is the value that I'm holding on as a family? That for me is a lot more important than what society negative view of me, because I know what I'm doing. I'm not here to try to explain to everyone, justify why I do, right?
And you don't have to.
You have to, because you just can't anyways. And I'm going to continue on this path. And I think I struggle too. I think in the first couple of years I struggle a lot, because for being a stay-at-home dad is so mundane. Like every day I complain to Rachel. I'm like, I feel like I'm wasting my life. I take my kids to the mall, feed them, watermelon, and then go to the library, change their diapers, come home, buy groceries and go home over and over, every day the same. And then, when I take my two kids out, I tell, I just feel like I'm a zoo. I feel like I'm in a zoo, and everybody look at me like, stare at me like, who this man carrying two young kids, toddler and a baby around, like it's so weird. And I feel like I'm being stared on, but so it really got onto me, and I understand, and I asked myself, who am I as a man? Because shouldn't I be working? Should I be like earning my income? Like nobody really talks to me anymore, because none of my friends have anything to say. But it's only like after these couple of years of journeying and discovering that, oh wait, why am I doing this? When I realized that, because I want to connect with my children. And I think, like you said, the minute I realized that, when I teach my kids something, they understand. Then I'm like, this gets really exciting, because then I'm like, actually, I am actually imparting something to my children just by being with them every day. And I think that's where, like, that's why I call it the ordinary dad, because I don't think I am extraordinary. And that's what I want to emphasize again. Like, I'm not like this some super, I read, education, all that stuff to prove that, I can do it. No, I'm just ordinary. I'm not some special skill. I just like any other father. I love my kids. I think most fathers do. And I want the best for them. And for me, this is how I see the best I can do for my children. and it's my spending my time with them. Yeah.
This is where I think like compassion and empathy for each other is really important. Because
Right.
like what Cliff was sharing, you know, that mundaneness. Like
Yes.
some people, some spouses might think like, you know, I am like dying at work and you have such a simple routine every day. How come you are so miserable? Like what is wrong with you? You might go through that cycle, and
Yeah.
and if that's you, to like don't feel like you're being judged. It's normal, it's valid. But
Yeah.
one thing that helped me was that in our first year of having a child, I was a stay-at-home mom. And it was devastating for me.
Right.
I really look up to stay-at-home parents because it was so hard for me.
Yeah.
Like if you look at my personality test, like achieving and like, you know, doing stuff is like very high on my output. It's part of me. So when I couldn't do those things, I couldn't be recognized for what I do.
Wow.
I mean, I just graduated from Hopkins, and then suddenly I was a stay-at-home mom. Like I had no identity. I was in Canada. So the cross-cultural stress and that loss of identity, it was the reverse. It was for me. But having gone through that journey, then it helped me to be in Cliff's shoes and realize that, you know what? Whatever that you're going through, Cliff, we'll write it out together. So I think those early years really helped us to forge that identity together, to know that nobody is in it alone.
Yeah.
We're going to write this through together. So as soon as I finished my bond, when I had my full-time bond served and my contract, I scaled down to part-time. And I said, you know what, Cliff, let's do it together.
I see.
You want to spend more time with your children.
Yeah, I want to spend more time with the kids too.
I see.
And that's when I said, you know, Cliff, if you want to start
part-time
you want to
work,
start
yeah.
part-time work, you go ahead. Now is your time, because I can scale down to part-time. I'm not afraid of that. So now it's your time. And that was when we started talking about, you know, Cliff, you've always had a heart for stay-at-home dad. There are other stay-at-home dads reaching out to you. Do you want to start something? And that was when I wrote in this article to one of the papers as a commentary. And the person who wrote into the commentary the week before reached out to me and said, hey, you know what? I really resonate with your article too. And then both of them got connected. And I
Yeah.
said, Cliff, you know what? When you have more than one person, you have a community.
Yes.
But Cliff was like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to.
I think,
You go ahead.
Let's hear Cliff's
Something.
version
Okay,
of
so yeah, so something I learned being married for like almost 12 years now is that my wife 90% is right. So you know she'll always
true, not
suggest
true.
something, right? And I always be like, no,
true.
I don't want to do it. You know, even meeting this stay-at-home dad. His name is Calvin Xia.
Yes,
Yeah,
Calvin.
yeah, Calvin, right? So I want to give him a shout out because he's the one who reached out to me and said, hey, let's meet up. And even before that, I have never met a stay-at-home dad. So my journey was, I would say, it's quite lonely.
Right.
You know, it's something I was struggling to figure out myself.
Yeah.
And after I'm meeting up with him, and then we start having coffee like once a month or something. And it wasn't like, you know, just hanging out and talking. And I think that I find that was very healthy for me. Yeah, I find you know, something I can just share my struggles, no judging, and just talk. You know, we just just hang out. Then I realized that okay. Then after that, then my wife suggested, hey, why don't you start this like stay-at-home dad group? And I'm like, no, I don't want. I'm already so busy looking. I always say, I'm always so busy. I have no time. Right? I've been looking after 2 kids already. I have no time. I'm always so busy.
Do you remember when we had this conversation? So we actually we went back to Canada to visit his family, and Cliff was driving. So driving, I feel like he's in his man zone. You know, he loves to drive, like
Right.
long drives, no mindless driving.
Yeah.
So he was just driving, and I was like, Cliff, you know what? I want you to tell me your heart. Like, what's your vision? And I said, you know what? I'm just going to be your scribe. I'm going to listen to what you say, and I'm going to make it into your vision statement. Because he always told me, I have no time. And I said, what? You know what? You're trapped in a car right now. You have time. I'm going to write it down
Wow.
for you. Tell me your vision. Tell me your mission. Tell me your strategies. Tell me your programs and activities. I'm going to write it down all for you. And in my work, like, I've gone through this envisioning exercise like dozens of times for my team. So I'm like, Cliff, I'm going to do it for you.
Wow.
Sit down, tell me your heart. And he was driving and he was so passionate, Josiah. He was telling me that, you know what, Wai Jia, I don't want anybody to think I'm extraordinary. I just want to be an ordinary dad doing what is mundane with faithfulness. I don't need to be recognized. I don't need these achievements. I just want to be who I am. And I just want other dads to be comfortable with being who they are. And I was like, oh my goodness, Cliff, just stop right there. And I was like, let me write all
Write it
this down.
Yeah.
And as I wrote this all down, he was just going on. Trust me, he was just like in his zone.
Wow.
And suddenly he just shouted, like, hands on the steering wheel. He was like going. I was like, oh wow, I hope that we're driving safe. Thank God the roads are so broad in Canada, right? He was like, I just want to be an ordinary dad. And I was like, Cliff, that's the name of your initiative.
Wow.
It is called
There we have
the
it.
Ordinary Dad.
That's why we
And
call it.
I remember,
And that was the birth of the Ordinary Dads.
I remember it was such a divine moment. I literally had chills and goosebumps all over me. I said, Cliff, this is the name. Go forth and never look back. I said, there's no copying out now. I've written down everything. I've got the vision. I've got the mission. All you need now is a website. I said, you have no excuse now. You got to do it.
Yeah, I think like what my hanging out, having coffee with Calvin really helped me see what would be beneficial for me when I first started at a stay-at-home dad journey. Because even, I also try to join other fathers group or, and most of the time it's a program, like a full-day program. And I cannot join them because I got to look after my kids, right? Like, you know what? Like I will go there for like maybe an hour and I got to go because Wai Jia needs to hand the kids off to me and I look after them. So I realized a couple of things. I realized that as a stay-at-home dad, what I'm looking for is community is number one, right? Some people I can just talk and hang out with without feeling judged and just, be open to share all type of things, all type of struggles, or even good or bad. And two is I need the flexibility. I cannot sit in a full day, 6 hour or 4 hour or even 3 hours because I don't have that flexibility. I gotta look after my kids, or my kids gotta do something, then I gotta take care of them. And so I realized, so Calvin, meeting up with Calvin become this kind of prototype of what I envision the Ordinary Dads community to be. It's a community where if you have a friend you always have coffee with, just talk about life. That's exactly what I wanted. And that's exactly how the Ordinary Dad give birth and some of our values, how we structured it based on that. Yeah.
And I want to address the joke. I know just now, Josiah, you were saying like, the Ordinary Dad's actually like birth from me, but that's actually something I wanna just comment on, because Cliff likes to joke that, if it weren't for me, this wouldn't have been birthed and all that. But you know what? Conversely, if it weren't for Cliff, a lot of what I do now wouldn't have been birthed. So a lot of people talk about this narrative that it's an unspoken narrative where people see like the stay-at-home dad as being the supporter of like the breadwinner wife.
Yeah.
And Cliff and I talk about this all the time, about how it's unhelpful. Because if you're always looking at the husband as being the supporter and the wife is like front-facing or whatever, there's always going to be this resentment of someone laid down a sacrifice and there's a debt. There is a debt. Someone owes the other person. But what really helped us reshape this paradigm was when we looked at our history together and we realized that, you know what? It's a partnership. Without Cliff, I wouldn't be able to do half the things that I'm doing. And without me, likewise, Cliff wouldn't have his own journey to tell, to be able to impact the lives that he does. So both of us have had a critical role to play in each other's lives. We always joke. He says that I'm 90% right. That's not true. In my head, he's like right all the time, because the joke that we have is like we kick each other's butts to do things that we don't want to do. So I'm not the one who wanted to go to Africa to be deployed by the United Nations. He said, Wai Jia, you better go. No, this is what you've been training your whole life for.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm gonna look after the kids. That's what I've been training all these years for too. So you gotta go out there. And same way, I think for couples who want to embark on this journey, I guess what I'm saying is that be really committed to doing this together, because you need one another. And if there's any debt to be owed, let it be to each other. Owe each other a debt of love. Owe each other a debt of love. That none of you see that one is owing the other for a season or whatever. It's that both of you.
If not, it'll be very unhealthy. It'll be like, you owe me because I sacrificed my career so that you can work.
Yeah.
And the other person will go back and forth, and you will have a very unhealthy marriage.
And if you are having those conversations, or if you are feeling like that, it's okay to talk about it, because we've had those conversations.
And we have talked about it. Those are tough conversations.
And we've gone through seasons where maybe I'm doing too much and Cliff says, you know what, you got to pull back. And maybe I say that, you know what, I'm going to step down from this, I'm going to say no to this so that you can do what you want to do and things like that. So it's a constant
Back and
dynamic
forth.
shift.
Yeah.
It's constant. And we just got to learn how to support one another because we're in it for the long haul, right?
Yeah. I
Right.
really like what you guys are talking about in terms of like having that partnership.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Being accountable to one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like that. It's about holding space for one another.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Like actually what I see what I see happening is, I think Wai Jia, you held space for Cliff to really bring out what was really on his mind, what was on his heart.
Right.
And I think in a similar way, Cliff, what I'm hearing is that there were a lot of moments as well that you are holding space for Wai Jia. And I think at the end of the day, that's what being in a relationship is like.
Yes.
Holding space for one another.
Non-judgmentally.
Non-judgmentally.
Yeah.
And that's why connect time is so important.
Yeah.
I think
It's holding that space.
I think what I try to do is try to bring out the best in Wai Jia. And I think that's why I always try to, like, when it comes to decision making, it's like, should you go to Africa and I gotta like look after the kids for 7 weeks? Okay, I think that is not just best for her, but I mean at that time, I felt like she needs to go because they needed her, right? So I feel like that's how we can support one another. And Rachel does the same for me. Like she would, like, sacrifice her time to give me time to rest, or do, like, I was working on my master's part-time while I was looking after the kids, right? And so she gave me time to write my thesis, and so I think that is how we work as a couple. Of course, from the outside you don't see that because you don't see all this inside discussion we have, all the decision that we make and whatnot. But you only see the outside.
Yeah. I think one of the really important things I want to share with couples who are listening is take charge of your narrative. Don't let society shape it for you. Because if you do, you'll be miserable. People might say things like, how come, in your family, like the husband is supporting you or things like that. And Cliff and I, we reshaped it by saying, you know what? We are both supporting each other. And in my head, at least in my own narrative, I know that Cliff is the leader in our family. He is the spiritual headship of our family. Because in whatever I do, I have to run it past him.
Yeah.
And some of my friends who are like, very, they're very accomplished. They tell me, so why should, like, what day and age, why is you asking your husband for permission? I'm like, I'm not asking for permission like I'm asking a boss. I'm like, he's my partner.
Right.
I'm going to him to ask for his support. Not just support like from a, can you support me in a subservient, like an assistant way. No. I'm asking him because I respect him as a leader. And he leads our family by saying what is appropriate, what is not. And he sets the tone and the kind of atmosphere, the values that he wants our family to be anchored in. And so we want to really re-challenge that paradigm that, if you're a stay-at-home dad, that means you're just supporting your wife. No. As a stay-at-home dad, guess what? You now have the head space and the heart space to actually lead your family in a very unique way. And only you can define that. And that, to me, is the most secure form of leadership, when nobody in society is giving you a paycheck or giving you a badge of honor or giving you a title. You yourself are defining through your own security and identity, your worth, and what value you want to put on the table and how you want to anchor and frame your family. For me, that is culture changing. That's why in my heart, Cliff will always be the number one man that I look up to, because he has not only lived it, he has earned my respect.
Wow. Thanks for that, Wai Jia.
Thank you.
So funny.
I do think that is so important as a father. I think kind of go back to that first question you asked me, what is the role of the father?
Yeah.
The role of the father is actually very active in the family, where I think maybe Asian culture or my parents, my father is not so active in the family. Most Asian culture tends to be like, if the father work hard, brings home the paycheck, that's it, right? And I think there's more than that as a father, right? There's more than that as a husband. Is beyond just the material that we bring in. It's the emotional, the values to what we want to lead and what we want to impart to our kids. I think that would last longer than just, for example, money, right? I think, yeah.
Bringing this back to the ordinary dads, Cliff, why don't you tell us a bit about what happens during these sessions?
Okay, sure.
What's it like?
Okay, so I think I think when I first started, I wanted a community of stay-at-home dad. I'm not, I purposely say we're not a support group. This is not like where everybody's just crying, hurting, and everybody, because I want a community where we just can help foster other stay-at-home dads to, I guess, not to say build relationship with one another, right? But here's the thing, like, I cannot force you to make friends. So I can only create this, I guess, a sandbox or area for the stay-at-home dad to, if they want to gather, they can gather. So I think once a month we I don't know, the first stay-at-home dad meetup is just having a coffee, right? Just whoever want to come, and I post on Instagram, and after that, Common Grants was very kind, and they contact me and say, hey, you know what, we can give you a space for you to do so. So once a month we meet at, once a month we meet at Common Grants just to chat and talk, and the format is very organic. I don't have too much of a structure. We just come and hang out and chat, and what I wanted is this relationship to be formed, I guess, organically, because like I said, I cannot force people to make friends. And so, and on top of that, we have a WhatsApp chat, right? A chat group, so that, maybe you cannot make it to Common Grants, when you're busy or whatnot, that's okay. You can do on a chat group. It's a space for you to share anything you want, your struggles, your inspiration, your, what irritates you. And we just, laugh along, joke along and whatnot. And so that's how I created the stay-at-home dad with the structure and the format in this place. Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier about having a flexible structure.
Yeah.
Because the nature of stay-home parents, life is that you can't afford like
chaotic.
5 hours is chaotic, There are some
Yeah.
days where, my child is sick and I just can't come.
Yeah, cannot come.
Yeah. But then there's that WhatsApp group and you can stay connected with one another.
Yeah. I call that like a la carte. You choose anything you want. You don't want to be in the WhatsApp group? Great. You know, in the WhatsApp group, when you show me meeting? Great. Like, I mean, it's however you want it, because I don't want to enforce, membership or things like that, because we just, the ordinary dads, we just want to, you have your life, and I rather the dad be focused on being a father and a husband at home more than just, showing up to what I'm doing. And if they benefit by coming to this, and then when they go home, they can be a better father or better husband, or more energized at least, to be able to connect with someone. That's great. Yeah.
Earlier, we spoke about holding space for one another as a couple. What I've appreciated about the ordinary dads, I mean, if I may say from my perspective, is that there is that space that's created in a circle of men, in a circle of stay-home dads that have and are going through similar things. When I first started my own journey as a stay-home dad, I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. Like I mentioned, right, I had a very extreme view of being a stay-home dad. And then when I started to listen to the stories of other stay-home dads, I realized that, wait a minute, I'm not so alone. Whatever that I'm going through, whatever I didn't know, it's not my fault. Sometimes you just have to realize that there are other people, there are other dads who are going through the same thing. Yeah. So thank you. If I haven't thanked you enough, thank you for starting this group, Cliff.
I think, thank you for sharing that. I think like human beings are so interesting, because you know what? I can make a class or stay-at-home dad, give you like, go for a class, 6 pointers, 5 pointers, or whatever, the struggle or the journey of a stay-at-home dad. But I do think that is when we share stories.
Yes.
Right. That's where really you understand and connect with one another. And I think that is the essence I want to go back to all the time, is that the ordinary dads, are we able to connect, have a space for dads to connect with one another.
I also love that the title of it is not like some stay-at-home dad group. It's called The Ordinary Dad. So that allows each dad to define how they want to be a stay-at-home dad. So like you said, you had this preconceived notion about what it should be. Even Cliff, he also had his idea that, if I don't do these certain things, I don't measure up to be a good enough. Am I really a real stay-at-home dad? Because, Wai Jia, you help me. So is that really, am I really a good enough stay-at-home dad? And it's about smashing those kinds of preconceived expectations and realizing that, what? There's just one common value. We just want to be ordinary dads who are faithful and who just love doing what we do, being authentic in our values. So that's something that, like, just watching from the sidelines, I've been really moved by.
And okay, I'm laughing because a lot of the things that we talk about on the WhatsApp group, and even when we meet with one another, it's not like here are 3 steps, here are 5 steps to what you should do at home. It's not. A lot of times it's sharing our failures, sharing our funny stories of sometimes, where we don't measure up and our kids correct us. And then we realize that, oh wow, we are not alone on this journey. And I think also more importantly, there are a lot of things that we talk about which are sometimes not even related to our parenting journey.
For sure, yeah.
And I think there's that friendship that's formed that I think I really, really appreciate so far. I am actually an introvert. I am a deep, deep introvert. So actually when I got that invitation to, hey, why don't we, gather together, I was, to be very honest, very anxious. Yeah. But I realized that it's not so formal. It's not so like, let's come and everyone
share your feelings. You must share. No.
Yes. Which I think, maybe I'm generalizing, but as a guy, it becomes very cringe for me. Like, I must share my feelings to...
What a turn off.
Strangers, But it soon became very natural. I didn't even feel any cringe the moment I stepped into the room together with, the rest of the dads. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's for sharing. I think something that I feel so good is when I can meet with another father. It doesn't have to be a stay-at-home dad. And you just share like, oh, you know what? I struggle with this with my kids today. And the other father can look at me in the eye and like completely understand without even saying a word. You have that connection with each other. And I think for me it's like, wow, like, then at least you don't feel you're alone. And I think being this stay-at-home dad journey can be quite lonely at times because, I find it's myself in the beginning. All my social network goes down because my social network is with my work, with people who I hang out with, is they're also doing this stuff. But once I start being a stay-at-home dad, like I don't have those connection no more.
So on that note, I think loneliness is quite a common theme because it's such an unconventional route. So I just want to speak to wives who might be listening in right now, just to say that, be conscious of the fact that because your husband's social circle, the work part is because it's dissipated, right? Your voice in his life becomes that much more important. And while, we should always be conscious of our voices, whether, both spouses are working or one is not. I just want to encourage wives who are listening in right now that if your husband chooses to take this route of courage, be conscious that your words of affirmation, your words of validation have the power to build and to encourage and uplift him or to tear down. And in that season, it matters more than ever.
Thanks for that, Wai Jia. Actually, this brings us to a very nice segue into what I wanted to also discuss, which is, how do we communicate care to men?
Wow.
There's this whole idea that men...
I know this answer.
You know this answer?
I know what you're going to say. I know what
Yeah.
he's going to say already.
So, okay, it's interesting because we're in a common ground now, actually recording this, right? And again, thank you to Common Ground for allowing the ordinary dads to have a space together and talk about what we go through. Very interestingly, they released some insights last year about rethinking how we express care and using the right ways to communicate care to men. So they held this citizen circle where they get a group of citizens together to discuss what were some of the needs that were appearing in our nation today. And one of the things was about men's way of receiving care, feeling lonely. So I'm not even talking about like stay-home dads, by the way.
I understand.
Men.
This is men in general, right? So this was part of what they called the unconference. Yeah, very, very interesting. One of the most profound conversations that happened was by this diverse group of men, and they shared about tough times they experienced and how when women and other men tried to communicate care to them, their loved ones' words somehow just didn't sound like care to them. Yeah. So, which brings me to that question, how do we better communicate care to men? Very cheap, but
No. I have like the one big word.
where, yeah.
But maybe both of you
go
can
first,
tell me
you go
whether
first.
it's
And I see if it's right.
that'll be fun.
Go
to
for
see.
it, go for it, yeah.
It's rest, space and rest,
Wow. It's
space and rest. I mean, maybe people are gonna think, am I right? Is it correct?
Cliff.
I'm just making a rough stab.
I think so. Go,
You know,
go.
Maybe
go.
some people are gonna say, I mean,
Why is space and rest?
I mean, a lot of people would guess maybe like the 5 love languages, or like
Yeah.
maybe even joke and say like maybe sex, or like
Yeah.
But I think space and rest is so important because I don't know if it's a man thing and why men need their man caves, But
Yeah, it's promoted in the main case.
but sometimes Cliff just needs to go into a room. And when he goes in one way, he comes out a different person sometimes. So Cliff, you tell me whether space and rest is the right. Is that true?
I think so.
Is that your
I
love language?
think I'm also introvert at heart because I used to ride my bike or run for like hours and you don't see anybody, you don't talk to anybody, and I'm okay with that. And I think something that I realized in this journey is that here's the funny thing, I don't even know what I wanted or what I need until I would just tahan, as I stay home there, just hold everything in, do everything. And until I cannot take it anymore, then I will blow out. Right? I'll get angry. I yell at Wai Jia, yell at the kids, right? And I can see this trend. Like this trend is like a cycle. I'd be like 2 or 3 weeks. I'll be like, I can be stay home there. I love being stay home there. And then by the 3rd week, I was like, I cannot take it anymore. I'm gonna blow up. And then Wai Jia discovered that, hey, you know what? I think you need to take breaks. You need to take like regular breaks along the way. And I think that's when she started to be more conscious of giving me those rests. Like, you know what? I take the kids for 2 hours. You go and do whatever. I take kids in the morning, so you get what. So and when I take those breaks, I think it helps me a lot more. It recharges me. Yeah. Even if I go out for a run for like an hour and don't talk to anybody. Yeah.
It's almost like a decompression time.
So it's so funny. Cliff always tells me this. He always says, sometimes men we don't know what we want.
That's true.
That's
true.
true.
I don't know what I
will
want.
second that.
I have no idea what I
So
want.
actually, we figured it out. It was trial and error along the way. It's like me observing him, right? I noticed these cyclical patterns and I realized that, hey, you know what? When Cliff gives me time to work, right, I feel very energized, right? Because why? I'm in control. I am in control. So guess what? Maybe I can flip it around, give him the time. And maybe when he's in control, he can do what he wants, right? And so when we discovered that, we just trial and errored it. And we realized, you know what? The magic number is like 2.5 hour blocks. And I would schedule my work meetings around that rest schedule for Cliff because it was that important for our family.
Right.
That was how important it was.
Wow.
For me to realize that if I prioritize Cliff, my husband, over my work, then it must show up on my calendar. That his rest is more important than a meeting that I might have with the WHO, because that has to fall in the space of the 2.5 hour block.
Wow.
So you see, when it comes to our family, our priority is actually spouse, children, and then work, right?
Well, God first, but
God
yes.
first, yeah. So I mean, we're religious. So yeah, so that has become really how to say it,
A value.
a value, but also quite different than how I previously think. Because previously I think that work is important, right? Ministry is important, then spouse, then children, right? Then that means that if that's the case, that means that I will sacrifice my kids or even Wai Jia's needs for work to get work done. And most of us, I think, unconsciously may do that because, we value our work, but how much we value, like, when we say we value each other, what does that mean in terms of priority?
So actually, that's so valuable. So Josiah, to answer your question, right, about how men receive care, maybe the answer I would suggest to wives is to ask your husband. But if he can't answer, maybe it's because he genuinely doesn't know.
Yes.
Then just observe, watch and see, and trial. Don't be afraid. Because sometimes as women, right, we think, oh, we feel very happy when someone takes us out for a meal or like when we get something.
Yeah.
And then we try to do that for our husbands and then they don't appreciate. Then we get really upset.
It's like-
We're like, whoa, I just got you a watch. Like,
why don't you
seriously,
don't
you have
want-
no
Yeah.
appreciation at
Yeah.
all.
Why you don't appreciate what I'm trying to do
What
for
do
you?
you do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When actually he is just starving to have a 1 hour pump gym session every day. Maybe that's what he needs. And maybe to you, it's like, that's such a waste of time, seriously. But if you care for him, then you'll prioritize that and make it happen. Yeah.
I'd like to go back to what was published by Common Ground.
Yeah.
So they asked all these questions and they gathered these men to talk about what they need, right? And what was care for them. So they found that the words of care men most wanted to hear at home is, I value you.
Wow.
I see your hard work. How can I help you? You're not alone. I love you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And from women specifically, the words of care that men wish to hear, and here we go, is you can rest.
Yeah. Rest.
Spot on.
Yeah.
It is
Oh,
rest.
you can rest.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, okay, anecdotally, I'd like to share something.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys. And you'd think that this whole idea about rest applies to men only, right? So my eldest is in primary school now. And I've really struggled with trying to get him to do his homework and learn his things and whatnot, right? And I mean, I always use words such as, you need to take control of your time. You need to be responsible for your work, right? And I approach it with a sense of trying to nurture him in a way where he takes charge. It is his life. It is what he's responsible for. We all want responsible kids. But it didn't work because he's always, trying to take his time and I sometimes might even identify it as, him trying to shirk off responsibility and all that. I got so frustrated until I realized that, wait a minute, if I was in his shoes, what do I really need? And I think I really started to see that it's rest. And I started to change my language actually. And I told my son, you know what? Let's take control of our rest times. So instead of let's take control of our working times, our times where we start to, let's dictate for ourselves. Let's try and say, when are we going to rest between 1 p.m. from when you come home from school to 6 p.m. for dinner time? And then we decide that, you know what? We're going to rest this here, here, and here. And very naturally, for some reason, and this is for my son, he was so into his work after that, Yeah. And I think it was that realization that we are responsible and we can take control and take charge for our rest as well. If not, in our minds, it's always like we're going to churn, we're going to work, no one's going to care for them. Yeah.
So Josiah, what you mentioned, right, is really, really important because when stay-at-home dad and wife couples, right, it's very easy to slip into that format of, you know what, the wife's schedule, because she's bringing in the money, she's having this high-paying job, she's so busy, her schedule takes priority over her husband's. It's very easy to fall into that. And it will always be a trap that's there. So both parties, and for the wife especially, if you're listening in right now, it's really important that you be intentional because the fact that your husband is so naturally such a champion of you, it's very easy for him to say, sure, whatever meetings you have, I'll take it. Or, you have this special thing to go for it. That's what Cliff does for me.
Yeah.
So it's really about us being intentional to say, no, Saturday mornings are Cliff's sacred times because he needs to go on his 2-hour bike ride. And even if I have a super important meeting on that morning, I'll have to reschedule it. So it's about prioritizing your husband's rest to be an even more important thing than your own work. Because once you do that, I feel like you're communicating his value to you. My husband's rest is more important than what my career can do for me. And I think that has to show up in the actions. If not, they're just words.
Yeah. Then, the words you say, right? I value you.
It has to show up.
It has to show up in actions. That's how it's displayed.
And
Or
to
else
live it out.
if it's just
Really show. If not, it's just
just words.
Lip
it doesn't
service
make,
in
lip
a sense
service.
lah.
Yeah.
And
Just
the
make
other
service.
thing that we've discovered is that we've started doing since last year was for Cliff to go on a personal retreat once a year. So he just came back from Hong Kong, and every time he comes back from a personal retreat, like going overseas, like 5 days, he comes back a different man.
Yeah, this time I came out different, man.
Yeah. So like no, last year was last year.
No, 2 years ago it was Perth.
Yeah. Oh, Perth. Yeah, that was only last year, no? Cliff came back with like a pearl necklace for me. And he was like, I went to Perth, I climbed this mountain. When I got on the top, I had this spiritual encounter, and wow, I came down a different man.
Wow.
And I bought this, and I tell you, when he gave me that necklace, I was like, you gotta do this more often.
That's so precious.
This year he bought back a box of Lao Po Ping for me.
From Hong Kong.
But the point is that rest is often underestimated, but it's such a powerful show of honor.
We've spoken about what men need, right? What support, what's the dialect of care, that language. I'd like to ask, Wai Jia, as a spouse of a stay-home dad, what support do you need? What kind of dialect of care?
Wow.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to also recognize that spouses do need care as well. I mean, now we're hearing, dads need to hear, I value you, you can rest, thank you for the hard work. But I think it's important for dads and men to realize what can they do as well for their spouse.
Like, I think being a go
for it.
I think just being a stay-at-home dad, I realized that, wow, as much as we're like a niche group, there's a niche of a niche, and it's just the spouse of the stay-at-home dad.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because what Wai Jia just shared, right? I think that is something that we never expected when we first took on this journey.
I think a lot of wives of stay-at-home dads they shed quiet tears
Okay.
when people look at us and say things like, oh wow, you're so privileged because you get to work and someone at home gets to clean up after you. Like, I've had comments like that.
Okay.
And when I share that with Cliff, I think he feels for me because he sees how hard I work for work. And then at home, like he said just now, I also cook, I also help him clean, I also partly homeschool the kids when I can. So it's like you're carrying a double load. But what the world sees, depending on their cultural expectations or how they were brought up, is an irresponsible woman who got a free pass at life. And I've had some of those comments said to me as well. So to the wives who are listening in, I just want to let you know you're not alone. And that what has been really helpful, I think, is again that connect time. Because women, we're creatures of language. So when Cliff gives me his connect time, I feel very loved.
Okay.
So for some people, wow, that's very intense, like every night. But when he gives me that few minutes of, actually it's half an hour, sometimes longer, but when he gives me that full-on presence to say, tell me about your day, tell me all your hardships, I'm here to listen. And Cliff asserts that very stabilizing presence in my life, because amidst all the chaos, he's able to tell me, he has that wisdom. He's actually 7 years older than me, and he carries that wisdom to say, Wai Jia, for this very complex work situation or this politics situation or this HR issue that you have, I think you should do this. I think you should. He has that clarity. So when people look at me and say, oh, you are so successful because you're such a supportive husband, sometimes I gently correct them and say, no, I am successful, or I am who I am because my husband leads me with his wisdom. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's the gift of time that he's given to me.
Thanks for that, Wai Jia. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot from this conversation, and I think I will also be very intentional.
I'm also learning a lot.
We all are. Actually, the beauty of a stay-home dad's journey is that, wow, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes.
And then you're like, okay, wow, we're learning every day. Yeah.
Oh, and maybe also the one thing that can help both to feel less trapped, because sometimes the loneliness is compounded by a sense of feeling trapped. So one thing we always just toss up in a conversation is that, you know what, if this isn't working out, we can swap or we can change it up. So let's not always think that a stay-at-home dad is defined by a certain label or defined by a certain thing. Both of you are adults. Both of us can say, you know what, we can switch it up. And why be afraid of that? Sometimes we feel trapped because, oh no, but I'm on this career trajectory. Oh no, but we've made this decision. If your marriage is more important, if you have prioritized your marriage and committed to that being more important than anything else, then don't be afraid to say, you know what, we can change it up.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good advice, because like I said, the beauty of this is that we can make our own decisions. Right? We are running our family. I can make my own decisions.
Well, it's your narrative.
It's your narrative, right? So why can't we be creative to craft something that is never be done or never be seen before? We can be as flexible as we want, however we want to craft it, as long as if, to what we valued. Yeah.
Okay. So rounding this up, Cliff, what's one thing that you would say to other men out there, stay-home dads or not?
I think for me, I feel like as a father, sometimes, you feel like you're stuck, as what Wai Jia has shared. Like, I do feel stuck sometimes, a lot of times. And Wai Jia has to, kindly remind me that, hey, you're not stuck. We can make decisions. We can make changes. And I think that is if you're a father, or if you're going to be a father, you can make changes if you need to. And don't feel like you're stuck to certain, assumptions or certain ways of doing it, because it's always been done. And I think when I look back at this journey of a stay-home dad, and there are times when I wish I can go back to work, but I never regret of spending time with my children. Spending time with our kids is probably the best investment I have, because I'm not just investing in their generation, I'm investing in like 2 or 3 generations down the line. Because when they grow up, my kids will have an idea of what family is like, how parents is like, the role of a father and a mother, what is love, what is conflict, how do you do all that. We all learn that from our own family. And so I am, trying to invest into them so that they can have a more healthier relationship, emotional health, or so that when they have kids, when they become grandparents, that one day they will be. And so this role actually becomes very important, where, sometimes we will think, it's not so important compared to work, for example, but it's very important. And I cannot, and how do I teach them is by living day to day with them. That is the only way I can teach them. Yeah.
Wow. Wai Jia, what about you? What would you say to other women out there?
Wow, I would say with all your heart, honor and cherish the men that you have. It's so easy sometimes to be caught up with work or ministry or different things outside in the world, or even like be obsessed with like, where am I going to find time for myself, right? Like, I'm so stretched already. But the funny thing is this, when you prioritize and put your husband above the kids, above the work, the funny thing is a man who is honored will lay down his life to love on you. And that is how I have felt from Cliff once we figured this out.
Wow.
So I would say that, yeah. That would be the first thing. Maybe the second thing is you're not alone. Yeah. Those are 2 things. You're not alone.
Well, thank you so much, Cliff and Wai Jia, for this time of sharing your stories, your perspectives. I myself have learned a lot. Till then, while parenting is anything but ordinary, the love, care, and commitment of ordinary dads do wonders to this sometimes mundane and perplexing parenting journey. You're not alone, ordinary dads, and moms as well. See you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.